Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she scrubbed the marble floors of the Grand Martinez estate. Her knees ached from hours of cleaning, but she dared not complain. At 22, she had spent her entire life serving her own family, treated more like hired help than a daughter. "Where are you, you worthless girl?" Her mother's shrill voice echoed through the mansion's corridors. Quickly gathered her cleaning supplies and hurried toward the main living room, where her mother, Isabella Martinez, sat elegantly on a velvet sofa. Isabella was a woman who prided herself on appearances, perfectly styled black hair, expensive jewelry, and clothes that cost more than most people earned in months. "The Blackwood family is coming for dinner tonight," Isabella announced without looking at. "Make sure everything is spotless, and wear that old black dress, the one that makes you look like proper help." His heart sank. The Blackwood family was one of the wealthiest in the city, and her parents desperately wanted to maintain their social connections with them. Had always wondered why her parents treated her so differently from others, but she had learned long ago not to question their decisions. "Yes, mother," replied quietly. And Isabella continued, finally looking at her daughter with cold eyes. "Stay in the kitchen during dinner. We don't want you embarrassing us in front of important guests." Nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She had grown accustomed to being hidden away whenever guests arrived, as if her very presence was shameful to her family. As evening approached, prepared an elaborate feast. She had taught herself to cook by watching online videos and reading cookbooks, becoming surprisingly skilled over the years. The aroma of roasted lamb, fresh herbs, and homemade bread filled the kitchen. Her father, Roberto Martinez, entered the kitchen wearing his finest suit. He was a tall man with graying temples who owned several successful businesses in the city. To the outside world, he appeared to be a loving family man, but knew better. "The food smells acceptable," he said curtly. "Remember what your mother told you, stay out of sight." Watched from the kitchen window as an expensive black car pulled up to their mansion. The Blackwood family emerged. Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, along with their son, a handsome young man around age whom her parents had been trying to set up with her sister, Sophia. Sophia Martinez was everything was not. Beautiful, confident, and spoiled beyond measure, she had always been the golden child. With her flowing hair and designer clothes, Sophia commanded attention wherever she went. Served the dinner from behind the scenes, carefully placing each dish on the table while the families chatted and laughed in the dining room. She caught glimpses of the conversation through the doorway, talk of business deals, social events, and potential marriages. "Sophia is such a lovely young woman," Mrs. Blackwood commented, "has spoken of her often." Felt a pang of loneliness as she listened to the praise her sister received. She had never experienced such kind words from anyone, let alone her own parents. As the evening progressed, retreated to her small room in the basement. Unlike the rest of the house, which was decorated with expensive furniture and artwork, its room was sparse. A single bed, a small dresser, and a tiny window that barely let in any light. She pulled out a worn journal from under her mattress and began writing, something she did every night to process her feelings and dreams. "Another day of being invisible," she wrote. "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be valued by someone, anyone, to be treated with kindness instead of constant criticism. I dream of a life where I matter, where someone sees me as more than just free labor." The next morning brought the same routine. Woke before dawn to prepare breakfast, clean the house, and tend to her family's needs. Her parents barely acknowledged her presence, speaking to her only to give orders or criticize her work. "The flowers in the front garden look terrible," Isabella complained over breakfast. "Spend the day replanting them. We can't have the neighbors thinking we don't maintain our property." Spent hours in the hot sun, digging up old flowers and planting new ones. Her hands became dirty and calloused, but she found some peace in the garden. It was one of the few places where she could think freely without interruption. As she worked, she noticed a strange man watching her from across the street. He was tall and pale, with dark hair and an expensive black coat despite the warm weather. There was something mysterious about him that made feel both curious and nervous. The man approached slowly, his movements graceful and confident. When he reached the garden gate, he spoke in a deep, smooth voice. "Excuse me, miss. I couldn't help but notice your beautiful work with the flowers." Looked up, surprised that anyone would compliment her efforts. She had dirt smudged on her face, and her old dress was stained with soil. Thank you, she replied shyly, unused to receiving praise from strangers. I'm Victor, he said, extending his hand. Victor, I've recently moved to the neighborhood. Hesitated before shaking his hand, noticing how cold his skin felt despite the warm day. I'm Martinez. A beautiful name for a beautiful young woman, Victor said, his eyes seeming to see right through her. Tell me, do you always work so hard while others rest comfortably inside? The question caught off guard. She glanced toward the house, where she could see her family relaxing in the air-conditioned living room. I don't mind the work, she lied, not wanting to complain about her family to a stranger. Victor's expression softened with understanding. You have kind eyes, but I can see sadness in them, someone as gentle and as you deserves much better treatment. Felt tears threatening to form. No one had ever spoken to her with such warmth and concern. She quickly looked away, embarrassed by her emotional response. I should get back to work, she said quietly. Of course, Victor replied. But remember that you have value beyond what others may tell you. You deserve respect and kindness. As Victor walked away, felt something shift inside her. His words echoed in her mind throughout the rest of the day. For the first time in years, someone had seen her as a person worthy of consideration. That evening, as served dinner to her family, she found herself thinking about Victor's mysterious presence and kind words. She wondered who he was and why he had taken the time to speak with her when everyone else seemed to overlook her existence. Her father's sharp voice interrupted her thoughts. You're moving too slowly. Our food is getting cold. Sorry, father, replied, quickly finishing her serving duties. As she retreated to the kitchen, caught her reflection in the window. For a brief moment, instead of seeing the tired, overlooked servant her family saw, she imagined someone who deserved the respect Victor had suggested she was worthy of. Little did know that her chance encounter with the mysterious Victor would soon change her life in ways she could never have imagined. The man she had met was no ordinary neighbor, and his interest in her went far deeper than casual kindness. Victor was indeed new to the neighborhood, but he had been watching the Martinez family for weeks, observing their dynamics and treatment of with growing concern and interest. As one of the most powerful vampire kings in existence, Victor had lived for centuries and seen countless examples of human cruelty and kindness. Situation particularly disturbed him because he recognized something special in her, a pure heart and gentle spirit that shone despite years of mistreatment. In his long life, Victor had rarely encountered humans who maintained such grace and kindness in the face of constant adversity. Over the following days, Victor found excuses to walk past the Martinez estate, hopping to catch glimpses of at work in the garden or around the house. Each time he saw her, he noticed new details about her situation that confirmed his suspicions about her mistreatment. Meanwhile, found herself looking forward to these brief encounters. Victor always had a kind word or gentle smile for her, treating her with a courtesy and respect she had never experienced from her own family. One afternoon, as was hanging laundry in the backyard, Victor appeared at the garden gate again. Good afternoon, he said warmly. I hope you don't mind my stopping by. I was walking through the neighborhood and saw you working. Smiled, feeling a flutter of happiness at seeing him again. I don't mind at all, mister. It's nice to have someone to talk to. Please call me Victor, he said, stepping closer to the fence. I've been thinking about our conversation the other day. You seem to carry a heavy burden for someone so young. Smile faded slightly. She wanted to confide in Victor about her situation, but she felt disloyal speaking negatively about her family. Everyone has responsibilities, she said diplomatically. Victor studied her face carefully. Responsibilities, yes, but what about dreams? What do you want from life? The question stunned. No one had ever asked her what she wanted before. Her entire existence revolved around meeting other people's needs and expectations. I don't know, she admitted honestly. I've never really thought about it. That's a tragedy, Victor said softly. A young woman like you should have dreams, aspirations, people who encourage her to pursue happiness. Felt tears welling up in her eyes. Victor's kindness was almost overwhelming after years of criticism and indifference. I should go inside, she whispered, afraid of breaking down in front of him. Wait, Victor called gently. If you ever need someone to talk to, someone who will listen without judgment, I live in the large house at the end of drive. Don't hesitate to come by if you need a friend." As hurried inside, she clutched Victor's words to her heart. The idea of having a friend, someone who cared about her, was almost too wonderful to believe. That night wrote extensively in her journal about Victor and the strange new feelings his kindness had awakened in her. For the first time in her life, she began to imagine a different kind of existence, one where she was valued and respected. She had no idea that Victor possessed supernatural abilities that allowed him to sense her emotional state and genuine character. As a vampire king, Victor had developed an ability to read human hearts, and his pure spirit called to him in ways he hadn't experienced in centuries. Unknown to, Victor had already begun making plans that would soon transform her life completely. The powerful vampire king had decided that Martinez deserved so much more than the life of servitude her family had imposed upon her, and he intended to show her exactly what it meant to be treated like royalty. The awakening queen's life began to change in subtle ways after her conversations with Victor. She found herself paying more attention to her appearance, not out of vanity, but because Victor's respectful treatment made her feel worthy of care. She started braiding her long, dark hair more carefully and taking time to appreciate her own reflection. The changes didn't go unnoticed by her family, though their responses were predictably harsh. "Stop spending so much time in front of mirrors," Isabella scolded one morning. "You have work to do, and primping won't change what you are." Despite her mother's cruel words, felt a new strength growing inside her. Victor's kindness had planted a seed of self-worth that was slowly beginning to bloom. Victor continued his casual visits, always appearing when was working outside. Their conversations grew deeper and began to trust him with her thoughts and feelings. "Victor, may I ask you something?" said one afternoon as she tended to the rose bushes. "Of course, you can ask me anything. Why are you so kind to me? Most people don't even notice I exist, but you always seem genuinely interested in what I have to say." Victor paused thoughtfully before responding. "In my experience, the most extraordinary people are often overlooked by others. You have qualities that are rare and precious: compassion, resilience, and an inner beauty that shines despite difficult circumstances." Felt her cheeks warm at his words. "You make me sound much more special than I am." "Perhaps others have convinced you to see yourself as less than you are," Victor replied gently. "But I see your true worth. You deserve to be treated with honor and respect." These conversations began to fundamentally change how saw herself. She started questioning why she accepted such poor treatment from her family and began dreaming of a different life. One evening, his parents announced they were hosting another dinner party, this time for an even more prestigious family, who owned a chain of luxury hotels across the country. "We need everything perfect tonight," Roberto commanded. "They are considering a business partnership with us, and we cannot afford any mistakes." Worked tirelessly preparing for the dinner party, creating an elaborate menu and decorating the dining room with fresh flowers from the garden. As usual, she was instructed to remain hidden in the kitchen during the meal. As the evening progressed, served course after course while listening to the conversation in the dining room. They were praising the food enthusiastically, not knowing it was prepared by the servant they had never been introduced to. "Roberto, this meal is extraordinary," Mr. commented. "You must give us the name of your chef." Heard her father laugh uncomfortably. "Oh, we have our ways of ensuring quality cuisine." Felt a familiar pang of hurt at being even basic acknowledgement for her work. She was so absorbed in her sadness that she didn't notice one of the guests had wandered into the kitchen. "Excuse me," a young man's voice said behind her. Turned to see James, the family's son, standing in the doorway. He was handsome and well-dressed, with kind eyes that reminded her of Victor's gentle expression. "I'm sorry to intrude," James continued. "I was looking for the restroom and got turned around. This house is quite large." "Oh, the restroom is just down the hall to your left," replied, quickly wiping her hands on her apron. James noticed the elaborate spread of dishes had prepared. "Did you make all of this? It's incredible." Nodded modestly. "Thank you. I hope everyone is enjoying the meal." "It's the best food I've had in months," James said sincerely. "You're clearly very talented. Are you a professional chef?" Before could answer, Isabella appeared in the kitchen doorway. her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "James, dear, what are you doing in here?" Isabella said with forced sweetness. "This is just our kitchen help. She shouldn't be bothering you." His heart sank as she watched James's expression change to confusion and then understanding. She could see the wheels turning in his mind as he realized she was being treated as a servant despite being clearly part of the family. "She wasn't bothering me at all," James replied firmly. "I was complimenting her exceptional cooking skills." Isabella's smile became strained. "How kind of you to notice. Please return to your duties." Nodded silently and turned back to the dishes, feeling the familiar shame of being dismissed and diminished in front of someone who had shown her genuine appreciation. After the guests left that evening, his parents were furious with her. "How dare you embarrass us like that?" Roberto shouted, "speaking with our guests as if you're their equal." "I was just being polite," protested quietly. "You were being presumptuous," Isabella snapped. "James is from one of the most influential families in the state. The last thing we need is for him to think we allow our help to act above their station." Retreated to her basement room, her heart heavy with familiar pain. She wrote in her journal that night about the conflicting experiences of the day, James's genuine appreciation for her cooking, and her parents' immediate dismissal of her worth. The next day, Victor appeared at the garden gate earlier than usual. Was surprised to see him, as she was still feeling low from the previous night's confrontation. "Good morning," Victor said, his voice carrying a note of concern. "You seem troubled today." Looked up from the flowers she was planting, and Victor could see the sadness in her eyes. "I had a difficult evening," she admitted. "Sometimes I wonder if my parents are right about me. Maybe I am just meant to serve others and shouldn't have expectations beyond that." Victor's expression grew serious. "May I ask you something directly?" She nodded. "Do your parents treat you as their daughter or as their servant?" The question hit like a physical blow. She had never heard anyone articulate the reality of her situation so clearly. She began, then stopped, unable to find words to defend her family's treatment of her. Victor stepped closer to the gate. "I've lived long enough to recognize when someone is being mistreated. What I see happening to you is not normal family dynamics. You're being treated as if you have no value beyond the work you provide." Tears began flowing down his cheeks. "But they're my family. They raised me and provided for me." "Providing basic necessities is the minimum responsibility parents have," Victor replied gently. "Love, encouragement, respect, and recognition of your individual worth, those are equally important, and it seems you've received none of them." Had never heard anyone validate her feelings so directly. The relief of having someone acknowledge her pain was overwhelming. "I don't know what else I could be," she whispered. "This is the only life I've ever known." Victor reached through the gate and gently touched his hand. His skin was cool, but his touch was comforting. "You could be anything you choose to be. You could be treated like a queen if you allowed the right person to care for you." Looked up into Victor's dark eyes, seeing an intensity there that both thrilled and frightened her. There was something mysterious about Victor that she couldn't quite identify, but his words stirred something deep inside her. "I don't understand what you mean," she said softly. "Come with me tonight," Victor said suddenly. "Let me show you what it feels like to be honored and respected. Let me treat you the way you deserve to be treated." His heart raced. The idea of leaving, even for one evening, was both terrifying and incredibly appealing. "I couldn't," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "My parents expect me to be here." "Your parents take your presence for granted," Victor replied. "One evening where you prioritize your own happiness won't harm anyone, but it might change your entire perspective on what life could offer you." Stood silent for a long moment, torn between her ingrained obedience and her growing desire for something better. "Where would we go?" she asked quietly. Victor smiled, the first truly warm smile had seen from him. "Trust me, I want to show you a world where you are valued and celebrated." That evening made a decision that would alter the course of her life forever. After completing her usual dinner duties and ensuring her family was settled for the night, she slipped out of the house and met Victor at the corner of the street. Victor was waiting beside an elegant black car that looked expensive beyond anything had ever seen. He was dressed in a sophisticated dark suit that made him look even more mysterious and handsome than usual. You came, he said with evident pleasure. I wasn't certain you would find the courage. I'm not sure I have, admitted nervously. She had changed into her best dress, though it was still simple and worn compared to the clothes her sister Sophia wore. You look beautiful, Victor said sincerely, opening the car door for her. Tonight you'll see yourself through different eyes. As they drove through the city, marveled at the luxury of the car's interior. The leather seats were soft, and classical music played softly through hidden speakers. Victor, where exactly are we going? Asked as they left her familiar neighborhood behind. To my home, Victor replied. I want to show you what it means to be treated with true respect and honor. Felt a flutter of nervousness mixed with excitement. She was taking the biggest risk of her life, but for the first time, she was doing something purely for herself. Victor's house was unlike anything had ever seen. It was a grand mansion that made even her family's expensive home look modest in comparison. The architecture was elegant and old-fashioned, with tall windows and intricate stonework. This is where you live, gasped as they approached the imposing front entrance. This is one of my residences, Victor replied casually, as if owning multiple mansions was perfectly normal. Inside was amazed by the opulent decorations, crystal chandeliers, antique furniture, and artwork that looked like it belonged in museums. Everything was elegant and expensive, yet somehow welcoming. Victor said, taking her hands in his, Tonight I want you to experience what it feels like to be treated like royalty. Will you allow me to honor you the way you deserve? Nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure what Victor meant. She was about to discover that Victor was not just a wealthy, mysterious man, but something far more extraordinary and dangerous than she could have ever imagined. The Vampire King's Queen. Victor led through his magnificent mansion, each room more breathtaking than the last. Had never imagined such luxury could exist, let alone that she would be welcomed into it as an honored guest rather than a servant. I've arranged something special for you, Victor said, guiding up a grand staircase lined with portraits of distinguished-looking individuals from different historical periods. I want you to experience true royal treatment. They arrived at an elaborate suite of rooms that took breath away. The bedroom was larger than the entire basement where she lived at home, decorated with rich fabrics in deep purples and golds. Antique furniture gleamed in the soft light from ornate lamps. Victor, this is too much, whispered, overwhelmed by the opulence surrounding her. Nothing is too much for someone who deserves the finest things in life, Victor replied. I want you to understand something. What you've experienced with your family is not normal. You've been treated poorly for so long that you've forgotten your own worth. A soft knock came at the door, and Victor opened it to reveal several women dressed in elegant black uniforms. These are members of my household staff, Victor explained. Tonight they're here to serve you. Stared in confusion as the women entered with arms full of beautiful gowns, jewelry, and cosmetics. She had never been on the receiving end of such service. I don't understand, said to Victor. Why are you doing all this for me? Victor approached her and gently took her hands. His skin was always cool to the touch, something had noticed but never questioned. I need to tell you something important about who I am, Victor said seriously. But first, I want you to experience what it feels like to be treated like the royalty you truly are. For the next several hours, experienced luxury beyond her wildest dreams. The staff helped her bathe in a marble tub filled with rose-scented water, then styled her hair in an elaborate updo with small diamonds woven throughout. They presented her with several gorgeous gowns to choose from, each one more beautiful than anything she had ever worn. Selected a deep red gown made of silk that seemed to shimmer in the light. When she looked at herself in the full-length mirror, she gasped. The woman staring back at her looked like a princess from a fairy tale. You look magnificent, Victor said from the doorway. He had changed into formal evening wear that made him look even more mysterious and handsome than usual. Turned toward him, feeling more confident and beautiful than ever before in her life. I feel like I'm living in a dream. This is reality, Victor said, approaching her with a small velvet box. This is how you should be treated every day. He opened the box to reveal an elaborate diamond necklace that sparkled like stars. Eyes widened in amazement as Victor carefully placed it around her neck. I can't accept this, protested, though she couldn't help admiring how beautiful the necklace looked against her skin. You can and you will, Victor replied firmly. There are things about me you need to know, but first let me show you the life you could have. Victor led to an elegant dining room where a feast had been prepared. Unlike the hurried meals she usually ate alone in the kitchen, this dinner was served on fine china with crystal glasses and silver utensils. Each course was presented beautifully, and Victor treated with the utmost courtesy, hanging on her every word as if her thoughts and opinions truly mattered. Tell me about your dreams, Victor said as they enjoyed a delicious dessert. What do you want from life? Thought carefully before answering. I've never really allowed myself to dream big, she admitted. But lately, I've been imagining what it would be like to have someone who valued me, who saw me as more than just free labor. What if I told you that you could have exactly that? Victor asked, his dark eyes intense and mysterious. I would say it sounds too good to be true, replied honestly. Victor reached across the table and took her hand. I need to share something with you that may frighten you, but I hope you'll trust me enough to listen with an open mind. Felt a flutter of nervousness, but nodded for him to continue. I am not entirely human, Victor said quietly. I am what your world would call a vampire, and not just any vampire. I am a king among my kind, someone who has lived for centuries and commands respect from supernatural beings across the globe. Stared at Victor in shock, her mind struggling to process what he had just revealed. Vampires existed only in movies and books as far as she knew, not in real life. I know it's difficult to believe, Victor continued gently. But everything you've experienced tonight, the luxury, the respect, the honor, this is how I live, and it's how I want to treat you. In my world, you would be regarded as royalty simply because I have chosen you as someone worthy of that treatment. Pulled her hand back, her heart racing with fear and confusion. You're saying you're a vampire, like in the movies? Not quite like in the movies, Victor replied calmly. I don't burn in sunlight, though I prefer nighttime. I don't turn into a bat or sleep in coffins. But I do have abilities that humans don't possess, and I have lived much longer than any human could. Stood up from the table, packing nervously around the room. This is crazy. Vampires aren't real. Look at me, Victor said, standing as well. Really look at me. Turned to face him, and as she watched, Victor's eyes began to glow with a soft red light. His canine teeth became slightly longer and sharper, and she could sense an otherworldly power radiating from him. Oh my God, whispered, backing away from him. I would never hurt you, Victor said quickly, his features returning to normal. In all my centuries of existence, I have never met a human with a heart as pure as yours. Despite years of mistreatment, you have remained kind, gentle, and compassionate. You are extraordinary. His mind was reeling. Everything she thought she knew about reality had just been shattered. Why are you telling me this? What do you want from me? Victor approached her slowly, his hands raised in a peaceful gesture. I want to offer you a choice. You can return to your family and continue living as their unpaid servant, accepting whatever scraps of affection they might occasionally throw your way. Or you can stay with me and live as my queen. Your queen, repeated, hardly able to believe what she was hearing. In vampire society, the king's chosen partner is treated with absolute reverence and respect, Victor explained. You would have wealth, luxury, and most importantly, you would be valued and cherished every single day. My staff would serve you, my resources would be at your disposal, and you would never again have to endure being treated as if you don't matter. Sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Victor was offering her. But I would have to become a vampire too. Not necessarily, Victor replied. That would be your choice, and only if you decided you wanted that kind of life permanently. For now, you could simply live under my protection and care as a human. Thought about her life with her family, the endless criticism, the thankless work, the constant feeling of being unwanted and unappreciated. Then she looked around at the magnificent room, remembered how Victor's staff had treated her like royalty, and considered Victor's offer of a life where she would be truly valued. What about my family? Asked quietly. What about them? Victor replied. When was the last time any of them asked about your happiness, your dreams, or when have they ever put your needs first or treated you with basic kindness? Realized she couldn't remember a single instance of her family showing genuine concern for her as a person, rather than as their personal servant. They would look for me, said, though even as she said it, she wondered if that was true. Would they? Victor asked gently. Or would they simply be inconvenienced by having to do their own housework? The truth of Victor's words hit hard. She realized that her family would likely be annoyed by her absence mainly because of the work they would have to do themselves, not because they would miss her as a person. "I need time to think," said finally. "Of course," Victor replied. "This is a life-changing decision and I don't want you to feel pressured. But I want you to understand something. You deserve so much more than what you've been accepting. You deserve love, respect, and honor." Victor walked to an ornate desk and wrote something on elegant stationery. "This is my address and contact information. Take time to consider your options, but know that my offer stands. You have a place here where you would be treated like the queen you truly are." That night, Victor arranged for to be driven home in his luxurious car. As they pulled up to her family's house, felt a familiar sinking feeling in her stomach. After experiencing true respect and luxury, returning to her life of servitude felt almost unbearable. "Thank you for tonight," told Victor as she prepared to get out of the car. "It was the most wonderful evening of my life." "It was just a glimpse of what your life could be," Victor replied. "You have value and worth that extends far beyond what your family has told you. Don't forget that." Snuck back into the house and lay in her small basement bed, staring at the ceiling and thinking about everything that had happened. In one evening, her entire worldview had been transformed. She had discovered that vampires were real, that she had attracted the attention of a vampire king, and that a life of true respect and luxury was possible for her. Over the next few days, went through the motions of her usual routine, but everything felt different. Her family's criticisms and dismissive treatment seemed even more cruel after experiencing Victor's kindness. She found herself constantly thinking about his offer and imagining what life as his queen would be like. "You're moving like you're in a trance," Isabella complained during breakfast. "What's wrong with you lately?" "Nothing, mother," replied automatically, though inside she was thinking about how Victor had never spoken to her with such harshness. This internal conflict intensified over the following week. She continued to see Victor occasionally when he walked past the house, and each encounter reinforced her growing certainty that she deserved better treatment than what her family provided. One evening, after a particularly harsh day of criticism from her parents, made her decision. She packed her few belongings into a small bag, left a note for her family, and walked to Victor's mansion. Victor opened the door before she could even knock, as if he had been expecting her. "I've made my choice," said, her voice stronger and more confident than it had ever been. "I want to be your queen." Victor smiled and could see genuine joy and satisfaction in his dark eyes. "Welcome home, your majesty," he said, bowing formally to her. As crossed the threshold into Victor's world, she felt a transformation beginning inside her. For the first time in her life, she was choosing her own path and accepting the love and respect she had always deserved. The next morning, woke in the luxurious bedroom Victor had prepared for her, surrounded by beauty and comfort she had never imagined possible. She realized that she would never again accept being treated as anything less than the royalty Victor saw her to be. Meanwhile, the Martinez family discovered Snote and reacted exactly as Victor had predicted. Rather than worrying about sore happiness, they were primarily annoyed about who would do the housework and cook their meals. "How dare she leave without permission?" Roberto fumed. "After everything we've done for her." But was no longer their servant to command. She had found someone who truly valued her, and she was finally living the life of respect and honor she had always deserved but never dared to dream possible. As settled into her new life as Victor's queen, she realized that sometimes the most extraordinary love comes from the most unexpected places. The mysterious vampire king had seen her true worth when her own family had been blind to it, and had offered her a life where she would never again be taken for granted or treated as less than precious. Martinez had finally found her place in the world, not as a servant, but as a queen worthy of the deepest respect and most devoted love. And Victor, the ancient vampire king, had found something equally valuable in a pure heart that made his immortal existence meaningful in ways he had never experienced before. Their love story was just beginning, built on a foundation of mutual respect, and the understanding that true royalty comes not from bloodlines or titles, but from recognizing and honoring the inherent worth in another person. Had learned that she deserved to be treated like a queen, and Victor had found a queen worthy of his centuries of devotion.